The rehearsal room was quiet, too quiet for a school preparing for its biggest spring showcase. Inside, the music teacher tapped her pen against the edge of the piano, frowning at a pile of rejected lyrics. "This school has talent," she muttered, "but no voice, no heart." And then she saw it, a folded sheet tucked beneath the others. Untitled, no name, but as she read the lyrics, the pen stopped tapping. Her breath slowed. Each line felt like a confession, like a wound trying to sing. She read the last verse twice. "Even without sound, I still echo. Even without words, I still reach you." She sat back, stunned, and then she knew exactly who she would give it to. In the next room, Hwang Min-ho leaned over the balcony rail, eyes closed, trying not to throw up. Showcase season always did this to him. To everyone else, he was a confident golden boy, lead singer, school heartthrob, always smiling. But backstage, his hands shook, his vision blurred. He called it nerves. His therapist called it panic disorder. Either way, no one knew, except maybe his voice coach, and he only knew because Min-ho had once fainted mid-rehearsal. Now the teacher walked up behind him and handed him a sheet. "New lyrics," she said. "Try this." He looked at the page. Read the first line, and felt like someone had opened a window inside him. Baek Ji-su sat on the back row of the music room, her notebook pressed tightly to her chest. She had written those words at 3 a.m, alone, no sound, no witness. She hadn't expected the teacher to use it. She had only slipped it under the door. Now it was in his hands. Hwang Min-ho, the boy whose voice could make the whole auditorium hush. The boy who had everything, attention, talent, light. She didn't want him to know it was her. But as he read her words out loud, one line at a time, her fingers trembled. He read slowly, carefully, like he was afraid to get it wrong. He didn't. After class, he stayed behind. He approached the teacher. "Who wrote this?" She shrugged. "Anonymous. Can I meet them? They didn't sign it." Min-ho looked down at the page. "Then can I at least sing it?" The teacher hesitated. "If you can make it your own." "I don't need to," he said. "It already sounds like me." That night, Ji-su stared at her blank notebook page. She didn't write a single word. Not because she had nothing to say, but because her heart had already said it through him. The next day, she found Min-ho in the practice room after lunch. He was seated at the piano, softly humming the melody she had imagined while writing. She didn't mean to enter, but the door was open and the music pulled her in like a tide. He turned when he heard the door creak. Their eyes met. Ji-su froze. He smiled politely. "Oh, hey, looking for someone." She shook her head, then hesitantly stepped inside. He watched her approach the piano. When she reached her notebook into view, he leaned forward curiously. She wrote, "I heard you practicing. It sounded beautiful." He blinked. "You're mute." She nodded. "I didn't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude." She shook her head. "It's okay." He stared at her for a second longer, then smiled again. "Do you write music?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Would you help me?" he asked, lifting the sheet she had written. "I want to understand what you meant." Her hands paused above the notebook. Then she wrote, "I can try, but you'll need to listen with your eyes." They began meeting every afternoon. At first it was simple. She would write. He would read. He would sing. She would adjust. No words were ever spoken. But something louder began to grow between the silence. Min-ho, for the first time in years, wasn't scared to sing in front of someone. And Ji-su, for the first time ever, wasn't afraid to be seen. Even without speaking, their rhythm became natural. She would tap his wrist when he lost tempo. He would mimic her facial expressions to guess what she meant. They laughed without sound. And when she smiled, he always did too. One evening, she brought him another song. He looked at it, then at her. This line, "If I vanish, will anyone notice the silence?" She nodded. He touched the words gently. You wrote this too, didn't you? Her breath caught. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. He knew. I thought so, he whispered. It sounds like you. From then on, he refused to work with anyone else. Even when the teacher pushed for a duet with Han So-bai, the perfect, photogenic soprano with a smile made for brochures. Min-ho, the teacher insisted, So-bai has the image, the clarity. We could even record this and use it for the school's campaign. But Min-ho stood his ground. I already have a partner. She can't sing. She doesn't have to. The teacher frowned. You're putting too much heart into a song. We need something people remember. They'll remember it, he said, because it's honest. So-bai wasn't used to being second, and when she saw Ji-su's notebook on Min-ho's desk one afternoon, she flipped it open while no one was looking. The pages were filled with lyrics, lines about silence and shadows, and wanting to be heard. She didn't say anything at first, but the next day, the teacher made an announcement. Due to unforeseen scheduling issues, Baek Ji-su will no longer be part of the showcase. Ji-su sat frozen. She looked at Min-ho. He was already on his feet. Later, in the stairwell, Ji-su wrote quickly, her hand shaking. I thought you said they couldn't replace me. They can't, he said, but they did. He clenched his jaw. Not for long. She turned away, tears in her eyes. He touched her wrist gently. I'm sorry. She shook her head, then wrote one last line. Maybe you should sing without me. He stared at her and said quietly, I never could. Hwang Min-ho didn't show up to rehearsal the next day. He didn't respond to the teacher's calls, didn't reply to texts, didn't answer when So-bai showed up at his classroom door, pretending to care. And Baek Ji-su? She didn't come to school at all. The notebook she always carried was missing from her desk. The seat beside the piano stayed empty. No one mentioned her name. But for Min-ho, her silence had never been louder. By lunchtime, he stood outside the practice room, staring at the grand piano they used to share. Inside, So-bai was rehearsing the duet version of the song. His song, Ji-su's song. The teacher clapped politely. Better, she said. Your tone is much more appealing than hers would have been. Min-ho walked in. Stop. The teacher turned. Excuse me? We're not using that version. You forfeited your say when your partner dropped out. She didn't drop out, he said. She was pushed out. So-bai stepped forward, arms crossed. You really think some lyric girl who can't sing should be the star? Min-ho looked her straight in the eye. She didn't just write the lyrics. She wrote me out of a panic attack. That's more than you've ever done. And he walked out. That evening, he showed up at Ji-su's apartment. Her grandmother answered the door. She's not feeling well, the older woman said gently. She hasn't come out of her room since yesterday. He held up the notebook he had taken from the music room. I think she needs this. The woman nodded and stepped aside. He knocked softly on Ji-su's door, then pushed it open. She sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the blank wall. He placed the notebook beside her and sat. For a while, neither of them moved. Then he said, I'm not singing without you. She didn't look at him. He opened the notebook to a blank page and started writing. You taught me to hear with my eyes. Now let me sing with yours. He placed the pen in her hand. She hesitated, then wrote, I can't go back there. They'll never see me. He replied, I see you. Isn't that enough for now? The next day, he returned to school alone. Rehearsals resumed, but Min-ho refused to sing the new version. At the end of the day, he sat in the empty auditorium, staring at the curtain that would rise in just 2 nights. So-bai passed by and scoffed. You're throwing away the spotlight for someone who doesn't even speak. He looked up. Some people say more in silence than you say in a whole performance. She rolled her eyes. He didn't care. Ji-su stayed home again. This time, not because she was afraid of them, but because she was afraid of him being disappointed. He had trusted her, with his voice, his panic, his secrets, and she had left him alone on stage. She picked up the notebook again and wrote a final verse, then tucked it into the cover and held it to her chest. On the night of the showcase, the school auditorium buzzed with energy. Parents, teachers, students, all seated under the stage lights, waiting. The music teacher stood backstage, headset on, clipboard shaking slightly. "Where's Min-ho?" No one answered. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then, just as she was about to cancel his performance slot, the stage manager shouted, "He's here!" Min-ho stepped onto stage, alone. No band, no backup, just him, holding a guitar. He approached the mic, looked at the crowd, then cleared his throat. "My name is Hwang Min-ho," he began, "and the song I'm about to sing, I didn't write it." A murmur rippled through the audience. He continued, "I couldn't have, because it came from someone who understands silence better than most of us understand words." The teacher tensed backstage. Min-ho looked at the audience, voice steady now. "There's someone out there who saved me, who heard the music in my silence. If she won't speak for herself, then I'll speak for her." He paused, then added, "If the voice that saved me cannot be heard, at least let it be felt." And he began to sing. It wasn't flashy. No instruments. No harmonies. Just his voice. Soft, honest, imperfect, and somehow perfect because of it. Every word carried weight. Every note trembled with meaning. He reached the chorus, and just as the final line echoed, even without sound, I still echo, a figure appeared at the side of the stage. Ji-su, notebook in hand, face pale, eyes shimmering. The audience turned. Min-ho froze mid-chord. She walked slowly, carefully, until she reached the microphone beside him, then opened her notebook. He stepped back. She turned the page and lifted it up. On it, in her delicate handwriting, "You found my voice. Let me finish the song." Min-ho nodded and continued playing. Ji-su didn't sing. She simply flipped pages, showing the rest of the lyrics. Her hands shook, but her eyes never looked away. The crowd leaned in, breathless. And when the final words appeared, "Even without words, I still reach you," the auditorium erupted into silence. Not applause, not immediately, just stillness. Then one person stood, clapping, then another, and another, until the entire room rose to its feet. Min-ho turned to Ji-su, overwhelmed. She smiled, wide, real, radiant. And for the first time, the applause wasn't for him. It was for her, for the girl no one had heard, but who had always been saying something worth listening to. The video spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours of performance, clips were circulating on school group chats, local forums, and even music blogs. A popular post captioned it simply, "The girl who never spoke and the boy who heard her." No one could forget the image. Baek Ji-su standing at the microphone, holding her notebook like a microphone of her own. No sound came from her lips, but every word echoed louder than a scream. And Hwang Min-ho beside her played with eyes closed like he was holding something fragile and sacred. For once, attention didn't make Ji-su panic, because they were not looking at her with pity. They were listening. The next day at school, she stepped into the hallway and felt the shift immediately. Students parted to let her pass. Some nodded, some smiled. One girl left a flower on her desk. Her seat, the one that used to feel like the corner of a forgotten page, was now the center of something new. And when Min-ho walked into the room, their eyes met. No words, just a small smile, the same one they always shared. But now, it belonged to the whole world. The music teacher approached her during break. "Ji-su," she began, clearing her throat. There was an edge of hesitation in her voice. "I owe you an apology." Ji-su blinked, unsure how to respond. The teacher glanced away, then added, "I was wrong." I underestimated you. I wanted something commercial, but what you created was art. Ji-su opened her notebook slowly, wrote just one word. Thank you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was grace. And the teacher nodded, a little ashamed, a little grateful. At lunch, Min-ho found her outside in the courtyard, sitting under the tree they used to avoid. Now, she sat there by choice. He held up a sketchbook. I had this idea. She tilted her head. A performance series. He said, "You write. I sing. But this time you're credited. We tell your story together." She looked hesitant. He added, "Only if you want to. No pressure." She took the notebook from her bag and flipped to a fresh page, then wrote, "As long as I can write everything I feel, even the parts that scare me." He smiled. "I think those are the ones we need the most." That weekend, they recorded the first video in the school music room. No crew, no equipment, just Min-ho, a borrowed mic, and Ji-su sitting beside the piano, turning the pages as he sang. She was nervous. He was too. But the second he began to sing, her hand steadied, because it wasn't about her voice. It was about the words she had buried for so long. And now they were finally alive. By the following Monday, the video had over 10,000 views. A local arts program reached out, asking if Ji-su would consider submitting her lyrics to a student songwriting contest. She hesitated. Min-ho didn't push. Instead, he left a note inside her notebook. "You already won the first contest. You made me sing again." But not everyone celebrated. So-bai avoided them in the hallways. And once, after class, she muttered under her breath as Ji-su passed, "If I lost to a notebook girl, what does that say about the school?" Min-ho heard it. He stepped in without raising his voice. "She didn't beat you," he said calmly. "She revealed you." So-bai rolled her eyes and stormed off. Ji-su didn't look angry. She looked relieved, not because someone defended her, but because she didn't need to anymore. As weeks passed, their project grew. They wrote 4 songs together, performed 2 at the school spring fair, and on the last one, Ji-su stood beside Min-ho on stage again. This time with a projector behind her, displaying the lyrics in real time. Each line was her voice. Each note was his. And together, they filled the auditorium without needing to say a single word out loud. One afternoon, she handed him a folded page, a song with no title. He read the first verse. "You gave the silence a shape, and I built my voice inside it." He looked up. "This is your story," he said. She nodded. "Then we need to do something special with it." For their final performance of the year, they planned a surprise. Min-ho would start the song alone. Halfway through, the lights would dim. And then Ji-su would walk on stage and sign the lyrics, not in spoken sign language, but an expressive gesture using her full body, a visual echo of the music. When the night came, the plan unfolded perfectly. Min-ho began to sing, voice clear and strong. Then the lights dimmed, and Ji-su appeared, backlit by the screen displaying each lyric. She didn't sing. She didn't speak. She moved. Her arms traced the notes. Her hands shaped the emotions. Her eyes locked with the audience and said everything her voice could not. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, not even Min-ho. After the applause, after the curtain, after the rush, they stood side by side in the dressing room, breathing hard, hearts pounding. "You were amazing," he said. She wrote, "So were you. I meant it when I said you saved me." She paused, then wrote, "You saved me too. I didn't know I had a voice until you listened." He looked at her for a long time, then whispered, "I always will." She didn't write anything else. She just stepped forward and hugged him, and he held her like a promise. Summer arrived with golden skies and restless anticipation. Most students raced toward vacation, dreams of beach days and late-night chats filling their thoughts. But for Ji-su and Min-ho, something else lingered. Their last video had reached over 50,000 views. A small label messaged Min-ho asking to meet. A professor from a local arts university invited Ji-su to a songwriting workshop, and for the first time in their lives, neither of them felt invisible. But with recognition came something they hadn't expected. Distance. It began quietly. Min-ho started staying late in the recording studio. The label lent him. He texted her updates, sent clips, shared drafts. But she didn't always answer, because she wasn't sure what to say anymore. She was proud of him. Of course she was. But when she walked into school alone again, with no guitar chords following her through the hallways, she started to wonder, had he moved past her? Was she just the girl who helped him begin? One evening, she sat by herself under their usual tree, notebook open. The words came slower now, not because she had nothing to say, but because everything she wanted to say felt too big for a page. When she turned to the last one they had written together, she found a note in his handwriting at the bottom. "If I ever forget where my voice came from, please remind me." She closed the notebook gently and smiled. A week later, he showed up at her doorstep, hair messy, hoodie loose, hands in his pockets like always. She blinked in surprise. "I was afraid to come," he said. She tilted her head, confused. "Afraid you'd outgrown me," he added, "that you didn't need me anymore." She opened her notebook, wrote slowly, "I never needed you. I chose you." He let out a breath. "And I keep choosing you. Every song, every time." They walked to the riverside after that. No cameras, no rehearsals, just quiet, the kind they both understood best. He pulled out a folded page from his jacket. "I started a new song," he said, "but I couldn't finish it." He handed it to her. She read the first lines. "The louder they cheered, the more I missed the silence we shared." She looked at him, moved, then pulled out her pen and wrote the next verse beneath it. "Because the silence was never empty. It always held your voice." He didn't say anything, but when their eyes met, they both knew. The music had changed, but the melody between them remained. Their final school day came with yearbook signings and bittersweet goodbyes. In the music room, students gathered for one last performance. Min-ho was expected to sing as always, but this time he stood beside Ji-su and said, "Today I'm not the star. She is." Gasps rippled through the room. He stepped back. She stepped forward, notebook in hand. She flipped to a new page, holding it up for everyone to see. "Once I wrote in silence. Now I write in echoes." Then she opened the next page. "This is not our last song. It's just our quietest verse." They performed the piece together. No instruments, no lights. Just her signs, his voice, and a silence between verses that spoke volumes. When the last note faded, no one clapped right away. They just sat there, still, as if afraid to break the spell. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. It wasn't for performance. It was for truth. Outside, after performance, Min-ho walked with her to the gate. "You were amazing," he said. She wrote, "So were you. You didn't tremble at all." "I wasn't afraid," he said. "Why?" He looked at her. "Because I knew you were beside me." She blushed, then wrote, "I always will be, even if we walk different stages." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a chain, a pendant shaped like an open book. Inside, a single line engraved, "Even without words, I still reach you." He clipped it around her wrist. She stared at it, touched. He leaned closer, whispered, "I don't know what comes next, but I want you in every song." She didn't need to write anything. Her eyes said everything. That summer, she attended the songwriting workshop. He recorded a demo with one of their earliest songs. A producer messaged back, "Who wrote these lyrics?" Min-ho smiled. She did. Fall arrived with quiet winds and golden leaves, brushing across the school gates like memories whispered in passing. Graduation came and went. Photos were taken. Certificates signed. Voices rose in celebration. But in the corner of the courtyard, away from the noise, Ji-su sat on the steps with her notebook in her lap, just watching. Min-ho approached quietly, hands in his coat pockets, scarf loose around his neck. "Ready to disappear from this place?" he asked. She smiled, then wrote, "I never really appeared until I met you." He sat beside her, looking out at the campus they had once walked through like strangers. Now, it felt like their story had been written into every brick. That night, Min-ho performed at a local cafe, not as a school star, not as a rising name, but as someone who had something to say. Ji-su stood beside the stage with her notebook open, ready to flip pages again, their old ritual. He looked at her before starting, microphone in hand. "This next song," he said, "was written by the girl who taught me that silence isn't empty. It's just waiting." And then he sang. The melody wasn't perfect. His fingers slipped on the strings once, but no one noticed, because the crowd watched Ji-su, watched the way she turned each lyric into movement, watched the way her hands painted the air, watched the way her eyes glistened without blinking. And when he sang the last line, "If I vanish, will anyone notice the silence?" she turned the final page. On it, one phrase in bold, handwritten letters. "I'm still here." The room went quiet. Then applause broke like thunder. Later, they walked the empty streets toward the subway station. He glanced at her. "You ever think about how weird it is?" She raised an eyebrow. "How you never said a single word," he continued. "But I swear, I've never felt more heard." She lowered her gaze, smiling gently, then wrote, "I never wanted to be loud. I just wanted someone to understand." He stopped walking. "I do." She looked at him. "I understand you. Not just the words you write, but the silences in between." She didn't respond. Didn't have to. He leaned forward, slowly, as if asking permission with his eyes. She didn't flinch. Their foreheads touched first. Then, softly, their lips. There was no audience, no spotlight, no applause, just a kiss under a flickering street lamp, and a silence that said everything. Weeks later, Ji-su received a package in the mail. It was from the producer, who had reached out after hearing their demo. Inside was a letter. "We've never read lyrics like yours. You captured what most people struggle to say out loud. We'd like to offer you a mentorship spot." She stared at the words, trembling. Then she pulled out her notebook and opened to the first page, the one where she had once written, "Even without sound, I still echo." She crossed it out, and below it wrote something new. "Even without fear, I still feel." Min-ho's music career moved slowly, as all things worth keeping do. He didn't become famous overnight, but he sang in places that mattered. Nursing homes, open mics, fundraisers, anywhere people were quiet enough to listen. And with every new song, Ji-su was there, sometimes writing, sometimes watching, always beside him. One winter evening, as snow dusted the windows of a tiny recording studio, Min-ho held a blank lyric sheet in his hand. He turned to her. "I want this one to be ours. Not just my voice. Your words. Together." She picked up her pen, but paused. He frowned slightly. "What is it?" She hesitated, then reached for the small microphone on the table. He blinked. "You want to try?" She nodded slowly, nervous, but certain. He adjusted the mic gently. "You don't have to force anything. Just breathe." She closed her eyes, took a breath, and then, softly, barely a whisper, she spoke the first line. "Even silence can sing." Min-ho's eyes widened. She opened her eyes, heart pounding, and looked at him. He didn't say a word, just smiled, wide, real radiant, and whispered, "You were never silent. The world just took too long to listen." They recorded the song, released it under both their names. Not many people heard it at first, but those who did wrote messages like, This saved me. I felt this in my bones. I didn't know someone else felt this way too. And that, for Ji-su, was more than enough. Years later, students at their old school still talk about the moment a girl with no voice held an entire auditorium in silence. They still watch the video, still asked each other, who wrote that song? And though many now knew her name, some still didn't. And Ji-su was okay with that, because even if they never knew her face, even if they never heard her speak, they would still feel her in every echo, in every quiet verse, in every heart she reached.